Ultimate Guide to Sex and Disability. Whether or not you are responding in the right way, with enough oomph, often enough, and to the right sort of person, God forbid you sexually respond to someone of the same sex. Or much older than you, or well, the list goes on. Thank you to Miriam Kaufman, Corey Silverberg, and Fran Odette by the way for this wonderful how-to guide on how to have sex with retarded people. The Ultimate Guide to Sex and Disability is an educational book by Miriam Kaufman, first published in 2007. It states that it's the first complete sex guide for people who live with disabilities, pain, illness, or chronic conditions. Useful for absolutely everyone, regardless of age, gender, or sexual orientation, the book addresses a wide range of disabilities from chronic fatigue, back pain, and asthma to spinal cord injury, hearing and visual impairment, multiple sclerosis, and more. Chris's first known mention of this book was on July 5, 2021 in a conversation between him and Noel, which was leaked on July 31, where Chris stated to, "As one of my more curious followers may have found through my Amazon by now, I even recently purchased a valuable and informative book to add additional guidance." He also provided a picture of the book in his lap too. At time of writing, Christorians are unaware of how Chris was made aware of this book. A few Christorians have taken it upon themselves to obtain this cursed piece of literature to see exactly how its contents could influence Chris, i.e., passages taken out of context. The book overall is graphic in its language and its description of the multiple facets of sex in general. As stated elsewhere, it's written from a perspective of someone who has a physical disability who may find sex to be awkward or unenjoyable. It is not intended as a guide on how to have sex with people with disabilities. Never attribute to malice that which can be adequately explained by stupidity. There are a few choice passages in the book that when taken out of context, and with the reader failing to grasp on basic reading comprehension skills, could explain why Chris thought what he was doing was okay and normal. Maybe if disabled people on the whole weren't so excluded from life and normal life experiences, then the devotee attraction would not seem weird at all. But rather a factor of the magical continuum of desire, or the notion that there's at least one somebody for everybody and hopefully, in all our cases, lots of somebodies. Considering how Chris views himself as disabled, he would naturally feel that what he is doing is okay because he has been excluded from life and normal life experiences and there's at least one somebody for everyone. Therefore in his mind the book is justifying his decision and giving him a sense of entitlement that he deserves this. We tend to class attractions as normal and abnormal, and an attraction to disabled folk is firmly assigned to the abnormal basket. Restrictions on who we're supposed to be attracted to seem the only abnormal thing to me. Chris would take this passage as the green light that justifies his sexual attraction to his mother. If there are no restrictions according to this book, why can't he have sex with his mother? However, the intention of the quote is reassure the disabled reader that his/her feelings towards someone are okay and justified. Not that it's okay to have sexual relationships with persons that most cultures' societies would deem as abhorrent and at very least illegal. As long as the fetish doesn't involve hurting themselves, or somebody else, and is consensual, we don't think people should be quick to judge fetishes as abnormal or threatening. In the context of the book as a whole, this line boils down to don't kink shame. Everyone has their own tastes and preferences, and nobody is in a position to judge. Except when it's having sex with your own mother. Whether or not you are responding in the right way, with enough oomph, often enough, and to the right sort of person, God forbid you sexually respond to someone of the same sex. Or much older than you. This passage aged like milk, considering it aims to break the taboo of having sex with someone much older than you. And Chris initially led on about his sexual partner being of this half of our universe, physically older than him, and worked thoroughly and compassionately with her beforehand. On the third day he rose again. Successful spontaneity often happens as a result of careful planning. People tend to see this need for planning as a negative thing, but it is really an opportunity to expand our sexual horizons. Regardless of disability, it can be a good idea to plan ahead for sex. This quote could have been why Chris was so rigid with doing the deed every 3 days like clockwork. Christorian opinions/discussion. In the pursuit of Christory, a number of Christorians obtained a copy of this book and subjected their eyeballs to the horrid content therein. Below are their opinions on topics on the book as a whole. In reading the contents of this book, the author has a common theme that amounts to in case you talking about sex with your caretaker makes them uncomfortable. Fire them and get a new one who is sex positive. It is concerning that the author implies that it is socially acceptable to discuss sexual topics with what essentially is a paid employee. Discussing sex with someone who is not specialized in the topic could be viewed as tactless at best and sexual harassment at worst. Anything that could be misconstrued as encouragement of less than consensual activities would be dangerous for an autistic who has a hard time understanding boundaries and desperately wants China. For a quick summary of the general lessons that the book takes away, it emphasizes how it's important to take away taboos with people who are disabled and dependent on caregivers who want sex. And it emphasizes breaking that taboo and getting comfortable asking for help achieving orgasm. One part of the book at the beginning says that there's too much taboo about who your partner is and God forbid it be someone much older than you. For some people it won't be feasible to see and touch all parts of their bodies. If you require 24-hour assistance you may never have someone willing to hold a mirror to see what your clitoris looks like. You may not feel comfortable even asking for that help. What supports will you need to have in place in case you need to deal with things that come up during your experience? You may have overwhelming feelings that you don't know how to cope with. Do you have someone you can talk with about these strong feelings or memories? If you don't have a friend, family member, or caregiver with whom you can hash things out, or some other way that you work through difficult things in your life. As a guidebook, seeing the book as a valuable and informative resource to help guide him with his incestuous relationship with Barb, Chris seems to have misinterpreted many of the things said in it. The primary purpose of the book is to provide assistance and advice on how to perform sexual intercourse to those with physical disabilities and chronic illnesses, who would typically have problems having sexual intercourse. Therefore, the scope of the book is a sexual guide written for people with disabilities, not a guide on how to have sex with disabled people. As a result, the book itself assumes the reader can already grasp what is considered sexually taboo and what is legal, as it does not appear to touch upon such topics in depth. This evidently makes it a terrible choice for Chris, whose problems relationship and sex-wise coupled with absolutely poor decision-making and reading comprehension skills go beyond the scope of this book. Chris the sexpert. Chris seems to have believed himself to be in a position to mentor people with relationship problems after reading this book. This is most notable with him attempting to provide guidance to the suitress on her finding her long-term sweetheart in the college she'd attend. Having newly found power in finding justification to do unspeakable acts, he felt himself to be an expert in all things regarding sex and relationships.